Alright, good morning, guys. So, I made this video last night, and apparently it was too long for YouTube for some stupid reason. So, I'm gonna do it again, and I'm gonna do it a different way now because I don't know. I woke up this morning, I was like, I don't know. It felt weird, so I'm doing it again. Um, so, for those of you who do not know, if you're not in the group that I'm in on social networkings, then you do not know that I posted a paper that I did. It's a academic paper on the change or the transmogrification of the traditional African religions through slavery once they got here to the Americas. And I thought I should do a video on it, kind of discussing, sorry, there's like a glare in my glasses, discussing more of the history of how Hoodoo got started and how all these other, excuse me, Afro-Caribbean religions, practices, systems came about. And one of the main books that I used in my research, and that was actually a part of the required reading for the class that the paper was for. I'm an anthropology student, about to be in graduate school within the next year. So there's that, if you're wondering what the hell, why I did this, or credentials. That's what I got. Now the book that I used is this, called Crossroads and Cosmologies, Diasporas and Ethnogenesis in the New World. Excuse me. And it's by Christopher C. Fennell, who's a wonderful, wonderful archaeologist and anthropologist who works mostly on the archaeology of slavery, basically, and works on these kinds of projects, mostly in Brazil and Cuba. Excuse me. I am in the process of getting my caffeine, so I'm a little bit still on the groggy side, but it is what it is. I think he's done a little bit of work in Haiti too, but the part that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention, and also why I'm making this video, in that group, apparently someone was talking to people in another group, and they were basically telling this person, well, Hoodoo came out of Christianity, and, you have to use the saints, you have to use the one true God as the main person. Can't use, the you can't use the 7 African gods from which all of those fucking religions and spiritual practices are based from. And like all these little things, you can't use this shit, you have to use the Christian whitewash of it. And it did not come from there. And I thought, well, apparently people need a history lesson, so I will give them one. So here we go. And I'm just going to read pretty much the last chapter of this book, which isn't that long. It's like 3 pages, so Sorry, I was getting the page open. Bear with me. Excuse me. If you get something out of it, you get something out of it. If it's boring, sorry. Just putting it out there because I know people are interested. And this chapter is called Creolization, Hybridity, and Ethnogenic Bricolage. So this goes over all the different aspects of what went into New World. Basically, I'm going to call it New World African religions. That's basically what it is. Okay, so here we go. By focusing on the spectrum of emblematic and instrumental expressions of core symbols, this study makes two contributions to studies of diasporas. First, it establishes that the artifacts of African American religious practices found in North American sites did not represent merely the shreds and tatters of past African cultures. Rather, those artifacts represented the continuing use and development of private ritual undertakings that were vital components of those cultures, even when practiced with the dominant belief systems in West and West Central Africa. Such points of correspondence are highlighted in analyzing those artifacts through the application of a detailed ethnohistorical analogy and an associated predictive model. The rich cultural heritage of instrumental traditions within European American groups, such as immigrants from the Palatine region of Germany, is also evident. Second, the study has revealed the interplay of disparate instrumental symbols in the creation of new emblematic expressions in locations such as Haiti and Brazil. This process of creation is illuminated by focusing on the points of contrast between developments in North America and the dynamics evident in the Caribbean and South America. These examples illustrate larger scale mechanisms of symbolic communication and social ordering. The interpretive approach outlined here provides a vehicle for examining the ways in which social group memberships shift over time and space. These changes become manifest as individuals decrease their expression of a previous group identity in their material culture, increase their expression of individually assertive and creative styles, and in turn create and adopt new group identities. Individual exercises of creativity and instrumental symbolic expression provide the ingredients for the formulation of new emblematic symbols. The expression of those new emblematic configurations can then enhance the cohesiveness of new social networks in which those individuals participate. I define this process as ethnogenic bricolage. I have refrained from referring to this blending of communicative forms as an operation of creolization. Recent symposia have addressed the question of whether concepts of creolization represent an emerging paradigm turning the page, for the analysis of culture. No consensus is formed even as to a definition for this term as applied in archaeological or folklore studies. Considering the varied use of the terms Creole and Creolization, one might be compelled to ask, how feasible is dialogue in the abstract when the concrete term itself is so unstable? Some studies of creolization and material culture tend to focus on the limited mixing of new lexicons with old grammars, without analyzing the internal logic of such grammars and how they might change as well. Other creolization studies emphasize the importance of the dominant status of one group over another in a past social setting. Archaeologists borrowed the creolization concept from linguistic analysis. This concept of creolization differed from an earlier, larger demographic reference to colonial populations born in the New World settings. As used in linguistics, creolization and pidginization are theoretical constructs for processes that typically involved different cultural groups in contact. Concepts of creolization and pidginization usually posits that such populations engage in a purposeful simplification of communicative forms in a process of accommodation within a context of asymmetrical power relations between the groups. Think about that last sentence for a second. Moving on. Concepts of syncretism or acculturation also usually view one cultural system as dominant and imposing itself upon subordinated systems. The histories of diasporas examined in this book certainly played out in a context of European colonial interests exercising power over the members of numerous African cultures. Yet, when one shifts to the question of how members of those African cultures created new social networks in the plantations of the New World, answers are not to be found by looking solely at the exercise of European power. What internal engines of cultural creativity helped animate in the development of new social networks within these diasporas? The simplification of abbreviation of instrumental expressions of core symbols occurred in an internal process that was initially independent of intercultural contact. This is a communicative operation that occurs within the expressive range of core symbols within any coherent shared meaning system. Yet, the abbreviation and increasing multivalence yields an instrumental expression that will be useful beyond its initial employment in private rituals for individual interests. Such abbreviation also produces multivalent expressions that can aid those sole actors in their late attempts to build new relationships with persons from other cultures and contact settings. For persons abducted from different regions of Africa and brought together on New World terrain, that did happen. That interaction usually involved individuals from groups in comparably subjugated positions rather than an asymmetry of power relations between them. This was not a matter of conservative grammars seeking new lexicons or of the subjugated making accommodations to their oppressors. Instead, those African and African American social actors creatively blended multivalent features of their disparate culture systems to generate new symbolic repertoires. To aid in the formation and consolidation of their new social networks. All right. Viewing an ethnicity as a socially constructed concept of group identity, this process is more aptly characterized as ethnogenic bricolage. Now, at this point, he's just trying to basically make his definition that he came up with, or term that he came up with, valid. But I will keep going because it's a lot. It's going to explain everything if it hasn't already. I use this term to incorporate key facets of Claude Lévi-Strauss's concept of bricolage and to apply those concepts to a different setting of intercultural interactions. Lévi-Strauss conceptualized a bricoleur as a practical, innovative manipulator of cultural knowledge within the bounded frame of an isolated social group. Lévi-Strauss emphasized that the bricolour's universe of instruments is closed and the rules of his game are always to make do with whatever is at hand. That is to say, with a set of tools and materials which is always infinite and is also heterogeneous. Think about that definition of a bricoleur. And think about the definition, well, it's not really the definition of hoodoo, But what do we do with hoodoo? We don't, we don't buy top shelf shit for everything. Nope. Best works, best shit ever put out was just gathering whatever the fuck I had laying around. And that's what that sentence means. To me. That's what I got out of it. Alright, keep going. Distinguishing bricolage from more deductive forms of Western scientific knowledge, Levi Strauss demonstrated that bricolage can generate equally valid cultural expressions and knowledge claims in a science of the concrete. A bricoleur thus engaged in formulating cultural forms and expressions such as myths through rearrangements and combinations of the varied components of his or her group's finite set of past traditions and symbolic compositions. Theoretical paradigms in anthropology and sociology have moved beyond the limitations of Levi Strauss's structuralist framework. That's something else. I can get into that if you want. Different video, though. However, his concept of bricolage incorporates very useful facets that can be applied in new ways. When moved to a setting of intercultural negotiation, one can conceive of multiple bricoleurs confronting open sets of cultural materials from various interacting cultural groups. In a process of ethnogenic bricolage, individuals of different cultural heritages interact over time to formulate new social networks with new repertoires of key symbols, communicative domains, and cultural practices. I'm going to read that again for the people who are hard of hearing. In a process of ethnogenic bricolage, individuals of different cultural heritages interact over time to formulate new social networks with new repertoires of key symbols, communicative domains, and cultural practices. Think on that for a minute. Those new symbols are created and developed over time, in large part through engagements with the multiple elements of abbreviated multivalent symbols for each of the contributing cultural groups. And what that means is that each individual culture group, if we could look at Hoodoo, African, European, Native American, each one of those groups is going to have their own little variation of the overall symbols created to form that group of all three this might explain that better. What they all come up with together, they're going to have different, slightly different approaches within the three culture groups, if that makes sense. All right. Jean Comroff's excellent study of the Shidi people of South Africa outlined a form of subversive bricolage. She conducted a historical and ethnographic study of an intercultural context in which colonial power was imposed by Europeans over the Barolong-Bu Rashidi, or the Chidi. The Chidi people, the Chidi, I think I'm saying that right. The Chidi people comprise a culture group governed by a Tswana chiefdom located in the borderland between Botswana and South Africa. Komaroff's analysis of changes in Chidi culture over time demonstrated the ways in which members of that group succeeded in breaking down the facets of key symbols of European Christianity and recombining those components to create new forms of symbolic communication and cultural practice in opposition to the colonial regime. Such innovations over time are at once both expressive and pragmatic, for they aim to change the real world by inducing transformations in the world of symbol and rite. And that's right as R-I-T-E, as in rights, not as in your directions. Komaroff's application of a concept of bricolage thus differed from that formulated by Levi Strauss, who had articulated a creative process for a cultural actor within a single closed cultural system. Komaroff revealed how such a creative process plays out in intercultural settings, with open sets of cultural elements that are susceptible to manipulation and change over time. Examining a colonial setting with two cultural groups possessing very different levels of power, she found a subversive bricolage at work among the Chidi. Examining New World contexts, we certainly see comparable incidents of subversive bricolage as followers of Haitian Voodoo, Brazilian Macumba, and Cuban Santeria subverted Christian symbols in their creation of new symbolic motifs that summarized key aspects of their new cultural traditions. Afro-Christian traditions in North America entailed similar dynamics, and what he's talking about Afro-Christian traditions is like here in North America we have, for lack of a better term, what society has called the Black Church. There's lots of little bitty symbols throughout the Black Church that ain't Christian. And I can get into that in another video as well. However, we also see an increased number of interacting and contributing cultures, including several lines of African cultural heritages, indigenous cultures, meaning the indigenous peoples of the American places where these slaves were living, and European influences, because who the fuck was owning them? The Europeans. That's where the Christianity came in. That's it. It was forced upon them. Other than that, who knows? There probably wouldn't even be all these new forms. Maybe. Who knows? Let's see, where was I? These New World contexts show a dynamism in which such multiple cultural traditions were being reconfigured to form new social networks, new socially constructed ethnicities, and related domains of symbolism, ritual, and practice. In these New World examples, a multiplicity of groups of African and indigenous heritage, interacting on fairly even levels of social power, were engaged in a process more aptly described by the terms of ethnogenic bricolage. And ethnogenic means combining ethnicities, or ethnogenic is the an ethnicity, basically. And he goes on to say, I advocate such a specific label for this process because of the recent malaise in social theorists' deployment of the concepts of creolization and hybridity. Michael Rolfe Trujillo captured the sentiments of many anthropologists and historians when he observed that creolization is a miracle begging for analysis. Unfortunately, the utility of this analytic concept has been significantly eroded by its ubiquitous and varied employment. Many sociocultural theorists have adopted the terms creolization and hybridity as interchangeable labels for virtually all moments of cultural creativity, which is not. Oh man, sorry, I had something in my eye, which isn't really accurate. But carrying on, this universalizing tendency has followed a trend among many social theorists to focus on individuals as the primary agents of all cultural operations. Such analysts have increasingly abandoned any focus on concepts of stable and coherent cultural systems as phenomena that shape individual perception and conduct. Instead, each individual is viewed as the primary domain of cultural agency, subscribing to and negotiating among multiple social networks simultaneously. Single actors are viewed as the constantly engaged operators of hybridity and creolization across those multiple networks. In this perspective, any given culture is constantly in flux as it is negotiated and reconfigured among the individuals who subscribe to and perform it. In essence, the interdependence of individual agents and social structures, as articulated by theorists such as Pierre Bourdieu and Anthony Giddens, has been replaced by some analysts with greater focus on individual agency and a disregard for stable structures. And I would like to read more because there's not a whole lot more in this chapter, but I'm already on like 27 minutes, and I was at 32 last night, and it was too long. So, I might make a part 2 to this. I don't know. If y'all want me to do a part 2 to this, I guess let me know. Yeah, that's basically a gist of it. I got the meat and potatoes that I needed to get out to you guys. So yeah, sit and stew on that for a little bit. If you are someone that's been running around saying that Christianity is the backbone of Hoodoo, it's not. And you know, this is not any kind of, you know, pomp book. This is academic work. This is studied work. This isn't that's something else for another video too. I just got that. But you know, this is factual. They went back through the history books. They found the artifacts. They did their research. And now I'm giving you guys who have not done your history homework a way to do your research. Right here, you can get this book and read it for yourself. You know, and to all you lucky people in that group who got my paper, excuse me, you guys got the laundry list of books that I used for it. So you guys can actually go and look those up too. And I would, I don't have them anymore. I was using them because I got them from the library. So, but they are out there. And I'm at 29 minutes now, so I'm gonna have to cut this now, unfortunately. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe if you wish to. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far. All right, so I will talk to you guys later.